When was school no longer your safe space? I pressed my ear harder against the cracked door of the guidance office, my heart hammering so loud I was sure Mrs. Henderson would hear it 3 rooms away. But she was too busy destroying my life to notice. Honestly, Sarah, these kids from the trailer park think they can just waltz into Harvard because they read a few books. Mrs. Henderson's voice dripped with the kind of disdain I'd never heard her use with me face to face. The Martinez girl, you know, the one whose father supposedly works construction, she actually believes she has a shot at MIT with their family income. My blood turned to ice. She was talking about me. Elena Martinez, 4.0 GPA, student council vice president, winner of 3 regional science fairs. The girl who stayed after school every day because home wasn't safe, who'd confided in Mrs. Henderson about dad's drinking and mom's 2 jobs just to keep us housed in Pine Valley mobile home community. Did you see the essay she submitted? Mrs. Henderson continued, and I heard papers rustling. All this sob story nonsense about overcoming adversity and being the first in her family to attend college. I swear these disadvantaged kids think tragedy equals scholarship money. Mrs. Chen, the chemistry teacher, laughed uncomfortably. But Elena's test scores are exceptional. Her SAT was 1580, and her AP scores. Numbers don't mean everything, Sarah. Trust me, I've been doing this for 15 years. These kids crash and burn the moment they hit real academic pressure. I've seen it 100 times. Better to guide them toward realistic options, community college, maybe a trade school. Save everyone the disappointment. My hands were shaking now. For 2 years, Mrs. Henderson had been my lifeline. When Dad came home drunk and screaming, I'd show up at her office the next morning, eyes puffy from crying, and she'd listen. She knew about the nights I did homework by flashlight because the electricity was cut off. She knew about the free lunch program I was too proud to join until she personally walked me through the paperwork. She knew about my dreams of studying engineering, of getting out of Pine Valley, of building something better. Or so I thought. What did you do about her college applications? Mrs. Chen asked. Well, I couldn't stop her from applying, that would raise red flags with the parents. But I may have adjusted her recommendations slightly. Nothing dishonest, you understand, just realistic. Instead of emphasizing her exceptional potential, I focused more on her need for structured support and financial considerations. Admissions officers know how to read between the lines. The world tilted sideways. My early decision application to MIT was submitted 3 weeks ago. My safety schools, my reach schools, my carefully researched list of engineering programs, all of them had received letters from Mrs. Henderson. Letters that were supposed to champion my abilities and confirm my character. Letters that apparently contained coded warnings about the poor kid who didn't know her place. Smart thinking, Mrs. Chen said, though she sounded uncertain. I suppose it saves them from. I couldn't listen anymore. My legs carried me away from the office on autopilot, past the trophy case displaying my science Olympiad medals, past the bulletin board where my name appeared on the honor roll for the 6th consecutive semester. Everything felt like a lie now, or worse, like evidence being used against me. In the empty computer lab, I sank into chair number 12 and stared at the black screen, my reflection ghost-like and fragmented. For the first time in my life, school didn't feel safe. But I wasn't going down without a fight. The computer screen came to life with my login, and muscle memory guided my fingers through the familiar pathways of the school's network. Being student council vice president had its perks, including administrative access to certain databases that most students never saw. I needed to know exactly what Mrs. Henderson had done to me, and more importantly, who else she'd done it to. My first stop was the college recommendation archive. Every guidance counselor at Roosevelt High was required to keep digital copies of all recommendation letters for accreditation purposes. It took me 23 minutes to crack Mrs. Henderson's password, Guidance 2019. Seriously, they needed better cybersecurity training for faculty. My own file made me physically nauseous. Where I expected to see phrases like exceptional student and highest recommendation, I found clinical, cold language that felt like reading my own obituary. Elena demonstrates adequate academic performance within her socioeconomic constraints, requires significant financial assistance which may impact her ability to fully participate in campus life, comes from an unstable family environment that has necessitated considerable emotional support throughout her high school tenure. Every strength had been reframed as a weakness. My perfect attendance became, may struggle with time management due to family obligations. My leadership roles were described as attempts to compensate for feelings of social inadequacy. She'd even mentioned Dad's drinking, not as context for my resilience, but as a concerning family dynamic that may affect collegiate performance. But the real gut punch came in the final paragraph. While Elena is well-meaning in her academic aspirations, I have concerns about her realistic preparation for the rigor of top-tier institutions. She may benefit more from a smaller, less demanding environment where she can receive the structured support she requires. I printed everything, my hands shaking as each page confirmed my worst fears. Then I kept digging. Marcus Williams, class of 2019. 4.0 GPA, accepted to community college instead of the University of Chicago he'd dreamed of. His recommendation mentioned cultural adjustment concerns and questions about long-term academic sustainability. Jasmine Carter, class of 2020. Valedictorian. Now at the local state branch instead of Brown University. Her letter focused on financial pressures and family obligations that may interfere with studies. David Kim, class of 2021. Perfect SAT score, currently working at his uncle's restaurant. His recommendation questioned whether he was truly ready for the independence required at elite institutions. A pattern emerged that made my stomach churn. Every single student Mrs. Henderson had sabotaged lived in Pine Valley, qualified for free lunch, or had parents who worked blue-collar jobs. The wealthy kids from Maple Heights, kids with lower GPAs and weaker extracurriculars, received glowing recommendations that read like love letters. I found Brittany Summers's file from last year. 3.2 GPA, currently at Princeton. Her recommendation called her a natural leader with unlimited potential and praised her sophisticated worldview developed through extensive travel opportunities. Travel opportunities that Daddy's investment banking salary had provided. By 4:30 p.m., I documented 18 cases spanning 4 years. 18 brilliant kids whose futures had been quietly, systematically destroyed by a woman they trusted. Kids who probably still didn't know what had been done to them. The security guard's footsteps echoed in the hallway, and I quickly logged out, shoving the printed evidence into my backpack. As I walked past Mrs. Henderson's darkened office, I noticed something I'd missed before, a small placard on her desk visible through the window. Maple Heights Elementary Parent Volunteer of the Year, 2018. She lived in the district she was protecting. The expensive district where her own kids attended private school and never had to worry about guidance counselors who saw their zip code as a disqualification. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom, working late again tonight. Leftover pizza in fridge. Love you, Mija. For the first time in hours, I smiled. Mom had no idea that her daughter was about to become very dangerous. The next morning, I arrived at school 40 minutes early, clutching a venti coffee that cost me lunch money for 3 days. I needed to be sharp for what came next. Phase 1 was intelligence gathering, now I needed proof that would stick. Mrs. Henderson's office door was locked, but the main guidance suite was open. I slipped past Mrs. Rodriguez, who was buried in her own stack of senior transcripts, and made my way to the filing cabinets behind Henderson's desk. Student government perks included a master key for emergency access to student records, a policy that was about to bite Roosevelt high in the ass. The physical files told an even uglier story than the digital ones. I photographed everything with my phone, handwritten notes in margins, posted flags marking students as unrealistic or overreaching, and most damning of all, a printed email thread between Henderson and Patricia Wells, the guidance director. Patricia, the Martinez girl, is pushing hard for early decision MIT. Parents have unrealistic expectations. Suggest we schedule a reality check conference before she wastes the application fee they probably can't afford. J. The response made my hands shake. Good catch, Jennifer. Better to disappoint them now than let her embarrass the school's placement statistics. We can't have another situation like the Kim boy last year. Another situation. They'd turned David Kim's destroyed dreams into a cautionary tale about maintaining Roosevelt's precious statistics. I photographed 12 more emails, each one a casual discussion of sabotage disguised as professional guidance. At 7:45, I heard Henderson's heels clicking down the hallway. I pocketed my phone and grabbed a random file, pretending to organize when she entered. Elena. You're here early. Her smile was the same warm, maternal expression that had comforted me through panic attacks and family crises. Now it made my skin crawl. What can I help you with, sweetheart? Sweetheart. I'd eaten that up for 2 years, desperate for any adult who seemed to care. Just dropping off the student government budget proposals, I lied smoothly, placing a manila folder on her desk. Mrs. Chen said you needed them before first period. You're such a responsible girl. She patted my shoulder, and I fought not to recoil. How are things at home? You seemed stressed yesterday. Yesterday. When I'd confided my fears about Dad losing his construction job, she'd listened with such apparent concern. Now I wondered if she was already planning how to weaponize that information in her next round of recommendation letters. Everything's fine, I said. Actually, I was wondering, have you heard anything from MIT yet? I know it's early, but... Her expression shifted almost imperceptibly. If I hadn't been watching for it, I would have missed the flash of something cold behind her eyes. These things take time, Elena. And remember what we discussed about backup plans. Your safety schools are much more appropriate. Appropriate. Such a clean word for crushing dreams. Of course, I smiled back. I should get to first period. I made it exactly 3 steps down the hallway before I heard her phone ring and her voice drop to a whisper. Patricia. She was just in here asking about MIT. Yes, the Martinez girl. I think we need to have that conference with her parents sooner rather than later. In AP Chemistry, Mrs. Chen handed back our latest exam. Perfect score, as usual. She lingered by my desk longer than necessary. Elena, can I speak with you after class? My stomach dropped. Had Henderson told her about finding me in the guidance office? When the bell rang and the classroom emptied, Mrs. Chen closed the door and turned to face me. I owe you an apology. I blinked. For what? Yesterday, in Jennifer's office. I participated in a conversation that was unprofessional. About you. She sat heavily on the edge of her desk. I went home last night and couldn't stop thinking about it. You're one of the most brilliant students I've taught in 15 years, Elena. What she said, what she's doing, it's not right. My carefully constructed facade cracked. You know about the recommendation letters? Mrs. Chen nodded grimly. I suspected. After our conversation yesterday, I looked into some patterns I'd noticed over the years. Exceptional students from certain backgrounds mysteriously ending up at less competitive schools. She leaned forward. Jennifer Henderson has been systematically undermining students like you, and I think it's time someone did something about it. I stared at her, hardly daring to hope. Like what? Like making sure the right people know exactly what's been happening in that guidance office. Mrs. Chen's smile was sharp as broken glass. Tell me, Elena, how good are you with computers? The alliance with Mrs. Chen changed everything. By lunch period, we'd moved our operation to her locked chemistry lab, spreading printed evidence across the blacktop lab tables like we were conducting some elaborate experiment. Which, in a way, we were. Look at this, Mrs. Chen said, pointing to a spreadsheet she created. I pulled the college acceptance data for the past 4 years. Students from Maple Heights zip codes with GPAs between 3.0 to 3.7 had an 89% acceptance rate to their first choice schools. Students from Pine Valley with GPAs between 3.8 to 4.0. Only 23%. I stared at the numbers, feeling sick. That's not possible unless someone was actively sabotaging the Pine Valley applications, she finished. Elena, this isn't just about you. This is systematic discrimination, and it's been going on since Henderson transferred here from Westfield Prep in 2018. Westfield Prep. Where tuition cost more than my mom made in 6 months. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Maya, emergency StuGov meeting after school. Henderson called it. Something about concerning digital security issues with student accounts. Ice flooded my veins. She knows. Mrs. Chen read the message over my shoulder and cursed under her breath. How much did you access yesterday? Everything. Her password, the recommendation archives, email threads with the guidance director. I was already calculating how screwed I was. If she checked the login history. We need to move faster than planned. Mrs. Chen grabbed her laptop and started typing furiously. I'm sending everything we've gathered to my personal email account right now. If Henderson tries to delete evidence or change passwords, we'll still have copies. The computer lab door rattled as someone tested the handle. Mrs. Chen had locked it, but through the frosted glass window, I could see two figures, one tall and angular that could only be Henderson, the other shorter and stockier. Principal Martinez. No relation, despite the shared last name that had led to years of awkward conversations. Dr. Martinez, Henderson's voice was muffled but audible through the door. I'm telling you, someone has been accessing confidential student records without authorization. The login timestamps show activity well after school hours. And you think it's a student? I know it's a student. The access came from the computer lab, using a student government administrative account. A pause. I have my suspicions about who. Mrs. Chen grabbed my arm and pointed toward the emergency exit at the back of the lab. Go. Take your backpack and get out of here. What about you? I'm a tenured teacher having lunch in my own classroom. You're a student who's about to be accused of hacking into school systems. She pressed a flash drive into my hand. Everything's on here. Get it to someone who can help. I stuffed the drive into my backpack and slipped toward the rear exit, but Henderson's next words stopped me cold. The Martinez girl has been displaying increasingly erratic behavior lately. Just this morning she was in my office asking strange questions about college applications. And given her family's financial pressures, I'm concerned she might be acting out in response to stress at home. My family's financial pressures. She was already building a narrative, painting me as an unstable kid from the wrong side of town who couldn't handle the pressure. Classic victim blaming with a classist twist. Principal Martinez's response was barely audible. You really think Elena would hack student records? I think Elena is a very intelligent girl who feels cornered. Intelligent people do desperate things when they're desperate, Roberto. Roberto. She was using his first name, appealing to their collegial relationship. And it was working. I could hear the doubt creeping into his voice. We should probably call her parents in for a conference. No. Absolutely not. Mom was already working double shifts to keep us afloat. Dad was 3 weeks sober and barely hanging on. A meeting about their daughter, hacking school computers, and displaying erratic behavior would destroy what little stability we had left. I pushed through the emergency exit as quietly as possible, my mind racing. Henderson wasn't just covering her tracks, she was going nuclear, preparing to destroy my reputation and my family in one calculated strike. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd underestimated exactly how desperate I was willing to get. The emergency exit deposited me behind the school dumpsters, where the smell of cafeteria mystery meat and industrial cleaner made my eyes water. I crouched between two green containers, clutching Mrs. Chen's flash drive like a lifeline, and tried to think through the panic clawing at my chest. Henderson was moving fast, faster than I'd anticipated. By now she'd probably already called Mom's work number, using that concerned guidance counselor voice to request an urgent meeting regarding Elena's recent behavioral concerns. Mom would leave her shift at the diner, lose 4 hours of tips, and walk into an ambush designed to paint her daughter as a criminal. My phone buzzed. Maya again, where are you? Henderson is looking for you everywhere. She told Principal Martinez you've been struggling with personal issues and might need immediate intervention. Elena, what the hell is going on? Immediate intervention. Code words that could mean anything from mandatory counseling to suspension to expulsion. Henderson was building a paper trail that would justify whatever punishment she had planned, while simultaneously destroying my credibility if I tried to expose her. I needed help, but who could I trust? Maya didn't know about my home situation. I'd spent 4 years carefully maintaining the illusion that everything was fine. Most teachers saw me as Henderson's success story, the disadvantaged kid she'd saved through guidance and mentorship. They'd never believe their beloved counselor was actually a predator. But Mrs. Chen had mentioned something earlier. She'd said she'd noticed patterns and suspected what Henderson was doing. That meant other people might have suspicions too. I pulled up the faculty directory on my phone and scrolled through names, trying to remember every conversation, every interaction, every moment when an adult had seemed to see through Henderson's act. Mr. Kowalski, the calculus teacher, had always seemed confused when I talked about my realistic college plans. MIT not interested in perfect scores anymore, he'd joked last month, but there had been genuine bewilderment in his voice. Ms. Rivera from AP English had looked surprised when I'd mentioned my backup community college applications. Since when do you need backup plans? She'd asked. And then there was Coach Thompson, who'd coached 3 students to full athletic scholarships at Division I schools, all 3 from Pine Valley. If Henderson's discrimination extended beyond academics, he would have noticed. I was about to call Coach Thompson when my phone rang. Mom. Mija, I just got the strangest call from your guidance counselor. She wants to meet with your father and me tomorrow morning about some concerning incidents at school. Mom's voice carried that particular strain it got when she was trying not to panic. Elena, please tell me you're not in trouble. We can't. I can't handle any more problems right now. My chest tightened. Mom sounded exhausted, the kind of bone-deep tired that came from working 60-hour weeks and still falling behind on bills. The last thing she needed was Henderson's psychological warfare disguised as professional concern. It's complicated, Mom. Can you stall the meeting? Tell her you need a few days to arrange time off work. Elena, if your counselor says it's urgent. It's not urgent, I cut her off. It's actually about college applications. Mrs. Henderson and I have different opinions about my academic goals, and I think she's mischaracterizing our disagreements. A long pause. Mom knew me well enough to hear what I wasn't saying. What kind of disagreements? I closed my eyes, weighing how much truth I could afford. She thinks I should lower my expectations. Apply to less competitive schools because of our financial situation. I think she's wrong. Another pause, but when Mom spoke again, her voice had steel in it. Your grades are perfect, Elena. Your test scores are perfect. If you want to reach for the stars, you reach for the stars. That's what I told her. Then we'll discuss it at the meeting. But Mija, if there's something else going on, something you're not telling me. I'll handle it, Mom. I promise. After we hung up, I sat in the shadow of the dumpsters and stared at Mrs. Chen's flash drive. 18 students' futures destroyed, evidence of systematic discrimination, email threads discussing sabotage like it was routine administrative work. Everything I needed to burn Henderson's career to the ground. But Henderson held all the power. She had access to school officials, parent contact information, and 4 years' worth of carefully constructed relationships. She could spin any narrative she wanted, and people would believe her because guidance counselors were supposed to be the good guys. Unless I changed the game entirely. I pulled up the contact information for Channel 7's investigative reporting team, the same journalists who'd exposed the superintendent's embezzlement scandal 2 years ago. My finger hovered over the call button. Once I made this call, there would be no going back. Henderson would know exactly who had destroyed her, and she'd use every weapon in her arsenal to retaliate. But 18 kids deserve justice, and dozens more deserve protection from her poison. My phone buzzed with another text from Maya, emergency meeting moved to library. Henderson says she needs to discuss digital citizenship with student government. Elena, I'm scared for you. I hit call. The phone rang twice before a crisp voice answered. Channel 7 newsroom, this is Jessica Park. My mouth went dry. Jessica Park, the investigative reporter who'd taken down 3 corrupt school board members and a superintendent. The woman who'd made a career out of exposing systemic abuse in educational institutions. Hi, I'm Elena Martinez, and I'm a student at Roosevelt High School. I have evidence that a guidance counselor has been systematically sabotaging college applications for low-income students over the past 4 years. Silence. Then, can you prove it? Digital records, email threads, recommendation letters, statistical analysis showing discriminatory patterns. 18 documented cases so far. My voice was steadier than I felt. The counselor is currently trying to discredit me before I can expose her. Where are you now? Hiding behind the school dumpsters because she's convinced the principal I'm some kind of unstable hacker. It sounded insane when I said it out loud, but Jessica Park just made a thoughtful humming noise. Email me everything you have. Use this address. She rattled off a secure email that I typed into my phone with shaking fingers. How long before your cover is blown completely? She called a mandatory student government meeting for 3:30. If I don't show up, she'll probably call the police and report me as a troubled student in crisis. Then we move fast. I need 90 minutes to review your evidence and make some calls. Can you stay hidden that long? I check my phone, 2:47 p.m. Maybe. But what if? Elena. Her voice cut through my rising panic. I've been investigating educational discrimination for 12 years. What you're describing isn't unusual, it's just usually harder to prove. If your evidence is as solid as you claim, we can end this woman's career by tonight. After we hung up, I crept around to the front of the building and watched through the main office windows. Henderson was pacing behind the reception desk, gesturing animatedly while she spoke to Principal Martinez. Every few seconds, she'd glance toward the hallway like she was expecting me to materialize. At 3:15, I saw Maya and the other student government officers filing toward the library. Maya kept looking around, clearly searching for me. I wanted to text her, to explain, but Henderson had probably already painted me as emotionally unstable. Any contact might just make things worse for Maya. My phone buzzed with an email notification. Jessica Park had already responded, Elena, your evidence is extraordinary. I'm sending a camera crew to Roosevelt in 20 minutes. We're going live at 6 p.m. tonight. Stay hidden until then. This is going to get ugly before it gets better. Going live. On the evening news. With my name, my face, my story broadcast to the entire city. My stomach lurched as the reality hit me. After tonight, everyone would know about Dad's drinking, Mom's 2 jobs, our trailer in Pine Valley. The privacy I'd fought so hard to maintain would be gone forever. But 18 kids' futures were worth more than my comfort. At 3:33, I watched through the library windows as Henderson stood before the student government officers, her face a mask of concerned authority. I couldn't hear her words, but I could see Maya's expression growing more worried with each sentence. Henderson was probably describing my deteriorating mental state and, concerning online behavior, building sympathy for when the hammer finally fell. Then I saw something that made my blood freeze. Henderson wasn't just talking, she was showing them something on her laptop. Photos. Screenshots. Evidence of my after-hours computer access displayed like a prosecutor presenting a slam dunk case. She wasn't just painting me as troubled anymore. She was painting me as a criminal. And judging by the shocked faces around that conference table, it was working perfectly. At 3:47, my phone exploded with notifications. Maya, Trevor, Samantha, Josh, every student government officer was texting me variations of the same panicked message. Elena, Henderson showed us the login records. She says you accessed confidential files and downloaded personal information about other students. She's calling the police. Where are you? This looks really bad. Please tell me there's an explanation for this. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type back. Henderson had flipped the script completely. Instead of a guidance counselor sabotaging students, I was now a hacker who'd violated privacy laws and stolen confidential data. She turned my evidence gathering into a federal crime. The worst part. Technically, she wasn't lying. I had accessed files without authorization. I had downloaded personal information. The fact that I'd done it to expose her crimes didn't change the legal reality that I'd committed crimes in the process. A new text from Maya made my stomach drop. Henderson says your family instability has been escalating for months. She showed us incident reports about you crying in her office, asking for help with your dad's drinking. Elena, why didn't you tell me any of this? Incident reports. Henderson had been documenting our private conversations, building a psychological profile that painted me as an unstable kid from a broken home. Every moment I trusted her with my pain, she'd been weaponizing it for exactly this scenario. I was typing a response to Maya when I heard sirens in the distance. Getting closer. Henderson had actually called the police. On a 16-year-old honor student whose only crime was discovering her corruption. I pictured the scene she'd painted for them, a troubled teenager from the wrong side of town, acting out due to family problems, potentially dangerous in her desperation. The sirens were definitely heading toward the school now. I had maybe 3 minutes before squad cars pulled into the parking lot and Roosevelt High went into lockdown mode. 3 minutes to decide whether to run or surrender, whether to trust that Jessica Park could save me from whatever Henderson had set in motion. My phone rang. Jessica Park. Elena, I just got off the phone with your principal. The school is claiming you've committed felony computer crimes and are potentially dangerous. Are you safe right now? I'm behind the school, but the police are almost here. Henderson told everyone I'm having some kind of mental breakdown because of my family situation. My voice cracked on the last words. She's been documenting private conversations I had with her about my dad's drinking. She's using my trust against me. Listen to me carefully. Do not run. Do not hide from the police. That will only make you look guilty. Jessica's voice was sharp, professional. Walk to the front of the school with your hands visible. Tell them you're Elena Martinez and you're surrendering voluntarily to discuss the computer access issue. But if they arrest me, if they arrest you for exposing educational fraud, that becomes part of the story. Elena, in about 90 minutes, this entire scandal is going to explode across every news station in the state. Henderson calling the police on you. That's not damage control, that's her digging her own grave deeper. Through the chain-link fence behind the school, I could see 3 police cruisers pulling into the main parking lot. Officers getting out, conferring with each other, then heading toward the building where Henderson was undoubtedly waiting to greet them with her carefully prepared narrative. There's something else, Jessica continued. I made some calls after reviewing your evidence. Jennifer Henderson was fired from Westfield Prep in 2018 for inappropriate guidance practices. The official records are sealed, but my source says it involved steering scholarship candidates away from opportunities. Sound familiar? My legs almost gave out. She's done this before. She's done this before, and Roosevelt High hired her anyway because she came with glowing references from the Westfield board, parents whose kids had benefited from her discrimination. Jessica's anger was barely controlled. Elena, you didn't just stumble onto one corrupt counselor. You found a predator with a pattern, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. The sirens had stopped. Time to face whatever Henderson had set in motion. I walked toward the front of the school with my hands visible, just like Jessica had instructed. But with each step, one thought echoed in my mind. Henderson had made this personal the moment she decided I didn't deserve my dreams. Now I was about to make it personal right back. The police officers were younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-20s, with the kind of serious expressions that meant they'd been briefed on a potentially unstable student situation. I approached them with my hands at my sides, visible and non-threatening, just like Jessica had coached me. I'm Elena Martinez, I said before they could speak. I understand there are questions about computer access at the school. The taller officer, whose nameplate read Donnelly, exchanged a glance with his partner. We need to talk to you about unauthorized access to school systems and potential theft of confidential student records. Theft. Henderson had escalated beyond simple computer crimes, she was accusing me of stealing information. The federal implications made my mouth go dry, but Jessica's voice echoed in my head, don't run, don't hide, let this be part of the story. I'd like to cooperate fully, I said. But I should mention that I've already been in contact with Channel 7 News about this situation. They're investigating some concerns I raised about discriminatory practices in the guidance department. Officer Donnelly's eyebrows shot up. This clearly wasn't part of the briefing Henderson had given them. What kind of concerns? Before I could answer, Henderson emerged from the main building, flanked by Principal Martinez and a woman I didn't recognize, probably the district's legal counsel. Henderson's face was a masterpiece of concerned authority, but I caught the flash of panic in her eyes when she heard me mention Channel 7. Officers, thank you for coming so quickly, Henderson said, her voice dripping with professional worry. Elena has been under tremendous stress lately, family problems, unrealistic academic pressure she's putting on herself. We've been trying to help her, but this morning she accessed confidential student files without authorization. Mrs. Henderson, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, would you like to explain to the officers why you've been systematically sabotaging college applications for low-income students? Or should I show them the email where you and Patricia Wells discussed it? The legal counsel stepped forward immediately. Elena, I'm going to stop you right there. Anything you say can be used against you in both criminal and civil proceedings. But the damage was done. Officer Donnelly was looking between Henderson and me with the expression of someone who just realized this wasn't a simple case of a troubled student acting out. Ma'am, he said to Henderson, what exactly did she access, and what makes you believe it was unauthorized? Henderson's composed mask slipped slightly. She used student government credentials to access guidance department files containing private student information. The timestamps show she was in the system for over 2 hours yesterday evening, downloading recommendation letters and personal records. Recommendation letters that contained false information designed to prevent students from getting into college, I added. I have documentation of 18 cases where Mrs. Henderson deliberately sabotaged applications from students in low-income families. Principal Martinez finally spoke up. Elena, these are serious accusations. Do you have actual evidence of deliberate sabotage? I pulled out my phone and opened the photos I'd taken that morning. Email thread from October 15th between Mrs. Henderson and a guidance director, discussing how to reality check my MIT application because my parents probably can't afford the application fee. Another email calling David Kim's destroyed dreams a cautionary tale about maintaining placement statistics. Henderson's face had gone pale. Those emails are taken out of context. Professional guidance discussions. Professional guidance. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. You wrote that I need structured support and come from an unstable family environment in my MIT recommendation. You turned every strength into a weakness because you decided kids from trailer parks don't belong at elite schools. The second police officer, Ramirez according to his nameplate, was taking notes. Mrs. Henderson, do you have copies of these recommendation letters the student is referring to? Those are confidential educational records, the legal counsel interjected quickly. We'll need proper warrants too. Actually, a new voice interrupted, we won't. Everyone turned to see Jessica Park approaching with a camera operator in tow. She was smaller than I'd expected from her TV appearances, but she moved with the confidence of someone who'd broken major stories before. Jessica Park, Channel 7 Investigative Unit. Mrs. Henderson, I have copies of 17 recommendation letters you've written over the past 4 years, obtained through legitimate journalistic channels. Would you like to comment on why students from Pine Valley Mobile Home Community receive systematically negative recommendations despite having superior academic records? Henderson looked like she might faint. The legal counsel grabbed her arm and whispered urgently in her ear, but it was too late. The camera was rolling, the police were involved, and Jessica Park smelled blood in the water. No comment, Henderson finally managed. Jessica smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. We go live in 90 minutes, Mrs. Henderson. Might want to reconsider. The next hour unfolded like a controlled explosion. Principal Martinez herded everyone into his office while the legal counsel made frantic phone calls to the district superintendent. Officer Donnelly kept shooting glances between his notepad and Henderson, clearly trying to figure out if he was dealing with a criminal student or a criminal guidance counselor. I sat in the plastic chair across from Martinez's desk, watching Henderson's carefully constructed world crumble in real time. She kept checking her phone, probably fielding calls from Westfield prep parents who'd gotten wind that their discrimination fairy godmother was about to be exposed on live television. Elena, Principal Martinez said finally, I need you to understand the seriousness of accessing school systems without proper authorization. Even if your motivations were. Roberto. Henderson's voice cracked slightly on his name. I think we're losing sight of the real issue here. Elena is clearly having some kind of psychological episode brought on by academic pressure and family instability. She's constructed this elaborate conspiracy theory to avoid facing the reality that her college goals might be unrealistic. The gaslighting was so smooth, so practiced, that for a moment I almost doubted myself. Then I remembered David Kim bagging groceries instead of studying pre-med at University of Chicago, and my resolve hardened. Mr. Martinez, I said, pulling out the printed emails Mrs. Chen and I had discovered. Mrs. Henderson wrote that David Kim from the class of 2021 wasn't ready for the independence required at elite institutions. David had a perfect SAT score and was ranked second in his class. Want to guess what his family's income was? Martinez took the papers with shaking hands. As he read, his face went through several distinct phases of horror. Henderson watched him like a defendant watching a jury deliberate, her usual confidence replaced by barely controlled panic. Jennifer, Martinez said slowly, did you write that Elena's family situation makes her a poor candidate for competitive colleges? Roberto, you have to understand the context. Did you write it? The silence stretched for 30 seconds. Finally, yes. Officer Ramirez looked up from his notepad. Ma'am, are you saying you deliberately wrote negative recommendations for students based on their family income? That's not, I was providing realistic guidance based on their zip code, I interrupted. I have the statistics, Officer Ramirez. Students from Maple Heights with 3.0 GPAs had an 89% acceptance rate to first-choice schools. Students from Pine Valley with 4.0 GPAs had a 23% acceptance rate. The only variable that explains the discrepancy is Mrs. Henderson's recommendations. Henderson's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and went even paler. I need to call my union representative. Before you do that, Jessica Park said from the doorway, you might want to know that Channel 12 and the Tribune just picked up the story. Apparently, 3 more Roosevelt alumni from Pine Valley came forward in the last hour with similar experiences. Marcus Williams, Jasmine Carter, and David Kim himself. My heart leaped. David Kim, the boy Henderson had turned into a cautionary tale, was finally getting his chance to speak. They all said the same thing, Jessica continued. Perfect grades, stellar test scores, dreams of elite universities. All steered toward more realistic options by their trusted guidance counselor. David Kim had a full scholarship offer to University of Chicago, Mrs. Henderson. He never knew about it because you intercepted the letter and told the admissions office he decided to pursue other opportunities. The room went dead silent. Henderson's face had gone from pale to gray. That's not, I never, she was stammering now, the polished professional facade completely shattered. Officer Donnelly closed his notepad. Ma'am, I think we need to continue this conversation downtown. As they led Henderson toward the door in handcuffs, she looked back at me with something that might have been hatred or might have been defeat. You have no idea what you've just done to yourself, she said quietly. I met her gaze steadily. I know exactly what I've done. I've made sure no other kid has to go through what David Kim went through. What I almost went through. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like justice. 3 hours after Henderson's arrest, I was sitting in Jessica Park's news van outside Roosevelt High, watching my life change in real time. The story had gone viral faster than anyone expected, #Justice for Elena was trending on Twitter, and my phone hadn't stopped buzzing with messages from reporters, college admissions counselors, and complete strangers offering support. But the message that made my hands shake came from an unknown number at 7:23 p.m. This isn't over. You destroyed an innocent woman's career with lies and manipulation. We know where you live, Elena Martinez. Pine Valley Trailer Park, Lot 47. We know where your mother works. Actions have consequences. I showed the text to Jessica, who immediately called Officer Donnelly. Within minutes, a patrol car was stationed outside our trailer, and Mom was getting an escort home from her evening shift at Romano's Diner. Probably empty threats, Jessica said, but she was frowning at her own phone. Though you should know, Channel 3 just ran a counterstory. Troubled student destroys beloved counselor's career. They interviewed 3 parents from Maple Heights who called Henderson a dedicated professional and you a vindictive liar. The counter-narrative was already taking shape. Henderson's supporters were painting her as the victim of a malicious attack by an unstable teenager who couldn't handle being told her dreams were unrealistic. They had money, connections, and a vested interest in protecting the system that had benefited their own children. My phone rang. MIT Admissions Office. Miss Martinez. This is Dean Patricia Wu from MIT Admissions. I'm calling about some concerning information we received regarding your application materials. My stomach dropped. Even with Henderson's arrest making national news, the damage to my application might already be irreversible. What kind of information? We received a recommendation letter from your guidance counselor that seemed inconsistent with your academic record. Given today's news reports, we'd like to offer you the opportunity to submit alternative recommendation letters. Your early decision deadline has been extended indefinitely. I almost dropped the phone. You mean I still have a chance? Miss Martinez, students with your academic credentials and personal resilience are exactly who we want at MIT. Mrs. Henderson's letter raised red flags because it was so obviously inappropriate for someone of your caliber. We've been investigating irregularities in Roosevelt High recommendations for months. 4 months. MIT had known something was wrong even before I discovered Henderson's crimes. After I hung up, Jessica was grinning. Good news. The best. But I have a feeling Henderson's friends aren't going to take this lying down. I was right. By Wednesday morning, Maple Heights parents had organized a legal defense fund for Henderson and hired Morrison, Klein & Associates, the same high-powered firm that had defended the previous superintendent. They were claiming Henderson was the victim of a coordinated attack by radical elements trying to destroy Roosevelt's guidance program. The morning news featured a perfectly manicured spokeswoman named Carol Westbrook standing in front of Roosevelt's main entrance. Jennifer Henderson dedicated 15 years to helping students achieve realistic goals based on their individual circumstances, she declared. Now a troubled teenager with documented behavioral issues has destroyed her career with stolen documents and manufactured evidence. Manufactured evidence. They were claiming I'd somehow faked Henderson's own emails and recommendation letters. It was desperate, but with enough money and media spin, desperate could work. During lunch, Maya found me hiding in Mrs. Chen's chemistry lab. Elena, I need you to know, half the school thinks you're a hero, but the other half thinks you're crazy. The Maple Heights kids are saying Henderson was just being honest about your chances, and you couldn't handle the truth. And what do you think? Maya sat down beside me, her expression serious. I think if someone had been sabotaging my dreams for 4 years, I would have burned the whole building down. You just burned the right person. That afternoon brought the worst news yet. A process server arrived at our trailer with legal papers. Henderson and the Maple Heights Parent Coalition were suing me and my family for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and destruction of property. They wanted $2.3 million in damages. Mom read the lawsuit papers twice, her hands trembling slightly. Mija, we can't afford to fight this. If they win. They won't win, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. We have the evidence. We have the truth. But truth and justice weren't the same thing, and I was starting to learn the difference. Henderson supporters had unlimited resources and 15 years of grateful Maple Heights parents ready to testify about her dedication. All I had was stolen emails and a testimony of kids from Pine Valley, kids whose credibility would be questioned simply because of where we lived. The war for my future was just beginning, and my enemies were playing for keeps. The first crack in Henderson's defense came from an unexpected source, her own daughter. I was sitting in Mrs. Chen's classroom at 7:15 a.m. Thursday morning, trying to catch up on AP Physics homework I'd ignored during the chaos, when my phone buzzed with a call from Jessica Park. Elena, I need you to get somewhere private. Now. I slipped into the empty hallway. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. I just got off the phone with Rebecca Henderson, Jennifer's daughter. She's a sophomore at Westfield Prep, and she wants to meet with us. My heart hammered. Why would she? Because she's been living with the guilt of what her mother did to David Kim. Apparently, David was Rebecca's tutor for 2 years. She knew about his University of Chicago acceptance because he told her about it the week before graduation. When he suddenly changed his mind about attending, Rebecca got suspicious. I gripped the phone tighter. She knows her mother intercepted the letter. She knows more than that. Rebecca's been keeping a journal since middle school, documenting all the conversations she overheard between her parents about her mother's work. Elena, this girl has been watching her mother destroy kids' lives for years, and she's been writing it all down. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in a Denny's booth across from Rebecca Henderson, a thin, nervous 15-year-old with her mother's sharp features but kind eyes. Her hands shook as she slid a leather-bound journal across the table to Jessica. I've been wanting to tell someone for 3 years, Rebecca said quietly. Ever since the Marcus Williams thing. What Marcus Williams thing? I asked. Rebecca's face crumpled slightly. Marcus was my lab partner in 8th grade at Pine Valley Middle before I transferred to Westfield. He used to talk about wanting to study journalism at University of Chicago. When graduation happened and he went to community college instead, I asked Mom why. She said he came to his senses about his unrealistic expectations. Jessica was photographing pages of the journal with her phone. Rebecca, this entry from October 2019, can you read it out loud? Rebecca cleared her throat and read in a shaky voice, Mom got home late tonight and was on the phone with someone called Patricia. She said, the Carter girl is pushing hard for Brown, but I put enough concerns in her recommendation to cool their interest. These kids need to learn their limitations. When I asked who she meant, Mom said it was just guidance counselor stuff and I wouldn't understand. Jasmine Carter. Valedictorian, now at state school instead of Brown. Another dream assassinated by Henderson's professional guidance. There's more, Rebecca continued, flipping pages. December 2020, Mom was laughing about some kid named David who got too big for his britches thinking he could handle University of Chicago. She said she saved him from embarrassment by declining his acceptance for him. Dad asked if that was legal. Mom said parents do it all the time. The words hit like physical blows. Henderson hadn't just written negative recommendations, she'd actively intercepted acceptances and declined them on students' behalf. That wasn't educational guidance, it was straight-up fraud. Rebecca, I said carefully, why are you coming forward now? This is your mother we're talking about. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. Because David Kim was the nicest person I ever met. He tutored me in calculus every Tuesday for free, even though his family needed money. When I got into Westfield Prep and he ended up at community college, I knew something was wrong. Smart, kind people like David don't just give up their dreams. Jessica closed the journal. Rebecca, are you prepared to testify about what you've witnessed? Your mother's lawyers are going to come after you hard. I've been preparing for 3 years, Rebecca said simply. I documented everything because I knew someday someone would need proof. I just didn't know it would be another kid my mom was trying to destroy. She looked directly at me. Elena, I'm sorry my mother hurt you. But I'm not sorry you caught her. By Friday morning, Rebecca Henderson's journal had become the nuclear weapon that obliterated her mother's defense strategy. Morrison, Klein and Associates withdrew from the case within 12 hours of Jessica's exclusive interview with Rebecca, and the Maple Heights Parent Coalition issued a terse statement about re-evaluating their position. But Henderson's supporters weren't done. They just got more desperate. I was walking to first period when Maya grabbed my arm and pulled me into an empty classroom. Elena, we have a problem. Someone broke into the guidance office last night. My blood turned to ice. What was taken? That's the weird part, nothing was taken. But someone went through all the filing cabinets and computer terminals. Principal Martinez thinks they were looking for evidence to destroy. Maya's eyes were wide with worry. There's more. Mrs. Rodriguez found a flash drive plugged into Henderson's old computer this morning. It had malware designed to corrupt the entire guidance database. Someone was trying to destroy the digital evidence that could save 18 kids' futures. If the recommendation archives were wiped, it would be my word against Henderson's, and her legal team would claim I'd fabricated everything. Did the malware work? Mrs. Chen happened to be walking by around 2 a.m. She does that sometimes when she can't sleep. She saw someone inside the guidance office and called security. Campus security chased them off before the malware could finish running. Mrs. Chen. I owed that woman my life at this point. During lunch, I was reviewing my testimony notes for Monday's emergency school board hearing when Trevor Kim approached my table. David Kim's younger brother, a junior I barely knew except by reputation, straight-A student, captain of the debate team, and according to Maya, completely terrified of ending up like his older brother. Elena, Trevor said quietly, sliding into the chair across from me. I need to tell you something about what happened to David. Something he never told anyone. I looked up from my notes. Trevor had his brother's serious expression, but there was anger burning behind his eyes that I recognized, the rage of watching someone you love get crushed by a system that was supposed to help them. Henderson didn't just intercept David's acceptance letter, Trevor continued, his voice barely above a whisper. She called University of Chicago and told them David had been arrested for shoplifting. Said the family was trying to hide it, but she felt obligated to inform them before they finalized his scholarship. The cafeteria noise faded to white static. She lied about a criminal record. David never shoplifted anything in his life. But Henderson told Chicago that Roosevelt High couldn't recommend a student with integrity issues, especially one whose family might be desperate enough to engage in petty theft. Trevor's hands were clenched into fists. Chicago withdrew the offer immediately. They said they couldn't take risks with scholarship recipients. I felt sick. Henderson hadn't just sabotaged dreams, she'd committed felony fraud by filing false reports about students' criminal histories. This went far beyond educational discrimination into active destruction of innocent kids' reputations. Trevor, did David ever try to fight it? How could he? He was 18 years old from a family that spoke broken English. Henderson was a respected guidance counselor with 15 years of experience. Who would believe him over her? Trevor's voice cracked slightly. David spent 6 months thinking he wasn't good enough for college. He didn't know someone had lied about him being a criminal. I grabbed Trevor's arm. We have to tell Jessica Park about this. If Henderson made false criminal allegations, that's a federal crime. Elena, there's something else. Trevor looked around nervously, then leaned closer. Henderson didn't just do this to David. My friend Marcus Williams, he told me last year that he'd gotten a full ride to Northwestern for journalism. Then suddenly Northwestern said they'd received concerning information about his character and withdrew the offer. Marcus Williams. Rebecca Henderson's former lab partner, the kid whose destroyed dreams had started her 3-year documentation project. How many others, Trevor? How many kids got their acceptances sabotaged with fake criminal allegations? I don't know. But Elena? Trevor stood up, his expression grim. Henderson's preliminary hearing is Monday morning. If she makes bail, I think she's going to disappear. Her house went up for sale yesterday, and Rebecca told Jessica that her mom's been transferring money to offshore accounts. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, enjoying your 15 minutes of fame. Monday's hearing will prove you're nothing but a lying little thief who destroyed an innocent woman's career. Hope MIT was worth it, because after we're done with you, you'll be lucky to get into community college. Some dreams aren't meant for trailer trash. I showed the message to Trevor, who read it with disgust. Elena, these people are scared. Really scared. They're not just trying to save Henderson anymore, they're trying to save a whole system that's been working perfectly for them. As the final bell rang and students headed to their last classes, I realized Trevor was absolutely right. This had never been just about Jennifer Henderson. She was a symptom of something much larger, a network of privileged parents who'd been buying their children's futures by systematically destroying kids like me. And now that their secret was out, they were going to war. The weekend before Henderson's preliminary hearing brought revelations that made my stomach churn. Jessica Park called me at 6:47 a.m. Saturday morning, her voice tight with barely controlled fury. Elena, I need you to sit down. We just discovered something that changes everything. I was already sitting at our tiny kitchen table, nursing instant coffee and trying to calm my nerves for Monday's testimony. What now? Henderson wasn't working alone. We found email exchanges between her and guidance counselors at 3 other schools in the district, Westfield Prep, Millbrook Academy, and Riverside High. They've been coordinating this for years. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. Coordinating what? A systematic pipeline. Henderson would sabotage applications from Roosevelt's low-income students, while the other counselors would boost applications from their wealthy kids to fill the same slots. Elena, we're looking at an organized conspiracy involving 4 schools and dozens of college acceptances. I gripped the phone tighter. How many students? Based on what we've found so far. At least 60 over the past 4 years. Maybe more. Jessica's voice cracked slightly. These people treated college admissions like a stock market, artificially deflating some kids' value while inflating others. Through our trailer's thin walls, I could hear Mom getting ready for her Saturday shift at Romano's. She'd been working extra hours all week, terrified that Henderson's lawsuit would bankrupt us before we could fight it. Now I had to tell her that our enemy wasn't just one corrupt counselor, it was an entire network of schools protecting their wealthy clientele. There's more, Jessica continued. Rebecca Henderson's journal mentions something called the Saturday Group, monthly meetings at Patricia Wells's house where all 4 guidance directors would discuss challenging cases. Rebecca wrote that her mother always came home from these meetings with lists of students who needed reality adjustments. Reality adjustments. Clinical language for dream assassination. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. Maya. Jessica, I have to go. Maya's calling. Elena, be careful this weekend. Henderson's bail hearing is Monday at 9 a.m., and if these people are as organized as they appear, they're going to pull out all the stops to discredit you before then. I switched to Maya's call. What's wrong? Elena, where are you right now? Maya's voice was breathless, panicked. Home. Why? Someone spray-painted liar across your locker in red paint. But that's not the worst part. She paused, and I could hear her walking quickly through what sounded like the school hallways. Principal Martinez called an emergency assembly for Monday morning. Before Henderson's hearing. Ice flooded my veins. What kind of assembly? He's bringing in Dr. Victoria Ashworth. She's some kind of educational psychologist who specializes in adolescent stress responses and fantasy-based coping mechanisms. Maya's voice dropped to a whisper. Elena, I think they're going to try to paint you as delusional in front of the entire school. Dr. Victoria Ashworth. I googled her while Maya was still talking. Multiple articles about teenagers who create elaborate fantasy narratives to cope with family dysfunction. Expert witness in 17 court cases involving fabricated abuse allegations by attention-seeking minors. They weren't just attacking my credibility anymore, they were preparing to destroy my mental health reputation in front of 400 classmates hours before I testified against Henderson. Maya, who authorized this assembly? That's the thing, it wasn't just Martinez. The email came from the district office, signed by Superintendent Morrison. Elena, this feels coordinated. Like they're trying to poison the jury pool before Monday's hearing. Superintendent Morrison, whose daughter had gotten into Stanford last year with a 3.4 GPA and a glowing recommendation from Henderson. Another parent with skin in the game. I hung up and immediately called Jessica back. They're bringing in a psychologist Monday morning to convince my entire school that I'm delusional. Dr. Victoria Ashworth. My heart sank. You know her. She's Morrison, Klein and Associates' favorite expert witness. Elena, this is actually good news. It means they're desperate enough to overplay their hand. Jessica's voice had shifted into reporter mode. If they're willing to psychologically attack a 16-year-old honor student in front of her peers, they know their case is falling apart. It won't feel like good news when 400 kids think I'm crazy. Elena, listen to me. Rebecca Henderson is speaking at Monday's hearing. She has 3 years of documentation proving this conspiracy goes far beyond her mother. David Kim is flying back from California to testify about the fake criminal allegations. And this morning, 2 parents from Westfield Prep called me. Their kids' consciences finally got the better of them. 2 more witnesses. 2 more cracks in the wall of silence. But as I hung up and watched Mom leave for another double shift, I couldn't shake the feeling that Monday would either vindicate everything I'd fought for or destroy what was left of my life at Roosevelt High. In 18 hours, I'd find out which. Sunday night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dr. Victoria Ashworth's professional headshot from her website, perfectly styled blonde hair, kind eyes that probably fooled juries into believing troubled teenagers were just attention-seeking liars. At 2:47 a.m., I gave up on sleep and sat at our kitchen table, rehearsing my testimony for Henderson's hearing. My phone buzzed. Jessica Park. Elena, I know it's late, but you need to hear this. Rebecca Henderson just called me. Her mother tried to contact her tonight. I sat up straighter. Henderson's in jail awaiting her hearing. She used her one phone call. Rebecca recorded the conversation. Jessica's voice was tight. Elena, Henderson didn't call to apologize or say goodbye. She called to threaten her own daughter. My blood turned cold. What kind of threat? Henderson told Rebecca that if she testifies tomorrow, she'll make sure Rebecca never gets into college anywhere. Said she has connections throughout the university system who will blacklist the Henderson name. Then she said something that made my skin crawl. She told Rebecca that accidents happen to girls who betray their families. I gripped the phone harder. She threatened a 15-year-old with physical harm. It gets worse. Henderson knows Rebecca's been staying with her aunt since the arrest. She somehow got the aunt's address and told Rebecca she knows exactly where to find her when she makes bail tomorrow morning. Through our thin trailer walls, I could hear Dad moving around in the living room, probably another sleepless night wrestling with 3 weeks of sobriety. The last thing my family needed was to become targets of Henderson's escalating desperation. Jessica, what if she makes bail? What if? She won't make bail. Not after threatening a witness. Rebecca's aunt called the police immediately, and they're adding witness intimidation to Henderson's charges. Jessica paused. But Elena, this proves how desperate they've become. Henderson's entire network is unraveling, and they're willing to threaten children to protect themselves. At 3:15 a.m., Maya texted me, can't sleep either. Heard about the threats. You're the bravest person I know, but I'm scared for you. At 3:52 a.m., Trevor Kim called, Elena, David's flight lands at 6 a.m. He wanted me to tell you something. He's not just testifying about what Henderson did to him. He found 2 other students from his community college who transferred there after getting their university acceptances mysteriously revoked. This thing is massive. At 4:33 a.m., Mrs. Chen sent an email. Elena, I'll be standing right behind you at the assembly tomorrow morning. You're not facing this alone. Also, I may have mentioned to several colleagues that Dr. Ashworth once testified that a student who reported sexual assault was fabricating trauma narratives for attention. Funny how word spreads in teacher lounges. At 5:18 a.m., my phone rang with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Elena Martinez. The voice was cold, professional. Female. This is Carol Westbrook from the Maple Heights Parent Coalition. The perfectly manicured spokeswoman who defended Henderson on television. I should have hung up immediately. We're prepared to offer you a full scholarship to any state university in exchange for withdrawing your testimony and issuing a public apology to Mrs. Henderson. I blinked, processing the bribery attempt. You're offering me money to lie. We're offering you a future. MIT will withdraw their interest. No respectable university will touch you. My hand was shaking, but my voice stayed steady. Mrs. Westbrook, are you threatening me? I'm offering you one last chance to do the right thing. Henderson made some mistakes in judgment, but destroying her career won't undo them. Take the scholarship, Elena. It's more than girls like you usually get. Girls like you. There it was, the naked classism that had been hiding behind all their legal maneuvering and psychological attacks. I hung up and immediately called Jessica to report the bribery attempt. As dawn broke over Pine Valley mobile home community, painting our dented trailer in golden light, I realized something had shifted inside me during the night. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was furious. In 4 hours, I'd walk into Roosevelt High and face whatever character assassination they'd prepared. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd shown me exactly what kind of people I was fighting. And now I knew I was going to win. The Roosevelt High auditorium had never felt smaller. 400 students packed into seats that seemed designed to amplify whispers, while Dr. Victoria Ashworth stood at the podium with her PowerPoint presentation titled Adolescent Stress Responses and Reality Distortion. I sat in the third row, Maya's hand squeezing mine, watching this woman methodically dismantle my credibility without ever saying my name. Teenagers from unstable home environments often create elaborate narratives to explain their academic struggles, Dr. Ashworth said, clicking to a slide about fantasy-based coping mechanisms. These narratives typically involve authority figures who are secretly working against them. Behind me, I heard Brittany Summers whisper, she's talking about Elena, right? The trailer park girl who thinks Mrs. Henderson sabotaged her. 20 minutes of clinical language designed to paint me as delusional. 20 minutes of explaining how disadvantaged students sometimes fabricate persecution complexes when faced with realistic academic limitations. Then Principal Martinez took the microphone. Now, I know there have been some serious allegations made against our guidance staff. But I want everyone to remember that Mrs. Henderson has served this school with distinction for. The auditorium doors burst open. Jessica Park strode down the center aisle with her camera operator, followed by David Kim, Rebecca Henderson, and 2 people I didn't recognize, a middle-aged Korean woman and a tall black man in an expensive suit. I'm sorry to interrupt, Jessica called out, her voice carrying to every corner of the auditorium, but I think Roosevelt High students deserve to hear from David Kim before Dr. Ashworth finishes explaining why Elena Martinez is supposedly delusional. Principal Martinez went pale. Ms. Park, this is a closed school assembly. David Kim, class of 2021, David said, taking the microphone from Martinez's shocked hands. Perfect SAT score, second in my class, full scholarship to University of Chicago that I never knew about because Mrs. Henderson told them I was a criminal. The auditorium went dead silent. You could hear 400 kids holding their breath. She called Chicago and said I'd been arrested for shoplifting. Said my family was desperate enough to steal, so how could they trust me with scholarship money? David's voice was steady, but I could see his hands shaking. I spent 2 years thinking I wasn't good enough for college. I was bagging groceries while my acceptance letter sat in Henderson's desk drawer. Dr. Ashworth was frantically packing up her presentation materials, but Rebecca Henderson stepped forward. I'm Jennifer Henderson's daughter, she announced, her young voice carrying surprising strength. For 3 years, I documented everything I heard my mother say about students from Pine Valley. She called them unrealistic dreamers who needed to learn their limitations. She said kids like Elena were taking spots from more deserving candidates. The Korean woman stepped forward, David's mother. My son good student, she said in heavily accented English. Mrs. Henderson tell me he not ready for big university. She say community college better for our kind of family. Our kind of family. The words hit the auditorium like a bomb. And I'm Marcus Williams, the tall black man said, taking the microphone. Class of 2019. I'm now a junior at Northwestern, yes, Northwestern, after spending 2 years at community college because Mrs. Henderson told them I had character issues. His smile was sharp as a blade. Funny thing about character issues, they disappear when you get a good lawyer. I stood up slowly, my heart hammering but my voice clear. Dr. Ashworth, does your presentation explain why kids from Maple Heights with 3.0 GPAs get into elite schools while kids from Pine Valley with perfect scores end up at community college? Because I have the statistics right here. The auditorium erupted. 400 voices mixing confusion, anger, and dawning understanding. In the chaos, I caught sight of Brittany Summers' face, no longer smug, just shocked. Principal Martinez grabbed the microphone back. Students, please return to your classes. Actually, Jessica Park said, holding up her phone, we're going live in 30 seconds. Elena, would you like to tell Roosevelt High what really happened in that guidance office? I looked out at 400 faces, some hostile, some curious, some finally understanding. Maya squeezed my hand one more time. 2 weeks ago, I thought school was my safe space, I began. Today, I know it can be again. But only if we make sure no guidance counselor ever destroys another kid's dreams because they think we don't deserve them. The camera rolled. The truth was finally free. And for the first time in weeks, Roosevelt High felt like home again.